Let me introduce our first speaker, Dr. Bill Virtue. Okay, Dr. Virtue here to my left. He graduated from the Indiana University School. He's a practicing dentist in Yadkinville, North Carolina, I believe for 39 years now. In 2010, he became board certified as a naturopathic doctor. He was president of this academy in 2012, and he has his fellowship and is the current secretary of the academy. Dr. Bill Virtue.
Thank you, Griff. Joe and I have been doing this program for probably 8 years now, and it's really been a labor of love. We're happy to present this. It's going to be very new to a lot of you. Maybe some of you are members. Any members in here? I know we got a couple over there. Okay, so there's a few of us that already know a lot of this. How many dentists we got? All right, hygienists. All right, assistants, physicians. No physicians? Okay, we usually have one or two in there. At any rate, it's going to be a lot of new information to you. And, you know, we don't want to make anybody right or wrong on what we're doing. That's not our point. We all graduated from great dental schools, and we were taught a certain thing. And in Indiana, mercury wasn't mentioned. You know, it was we put in a glass jar, which you weren't using, the scrap, and that was about it. But things have changed in our understanding. So what we're going to present for the next 3 days, particularly this course, will be more focused on the mercury aspect of it and how to protect yourself from the mercury vapors, and not only yourself, but your staff, which, you know, you guys, the dentists and assistants, are there all day long. The patients come in for an hour or two and they're gone. So if you don't completely think about the patient this way, I want you to think about yourselves, because you're working in an environment that's very, very mercury rich. And you're going to find out in the next couple days why that's important to protect yourself from it. I first went to a meeting back in Durham 20 years ago, and I honestly got to tell you, I thought it was the wackiest thing I've ever heard. I came to a course, there was no pictures of teeth whatsoever, and it was a dental course. I mean, you don't go to dental courses without pictures of teeth. There was no impression techniques taught. There was no better partial. There was nothing about dentistry. It was all about science. So I came away with a feeling of these guys are really weird. Since that, and it was only about 30 of us at this meeting, that was the size. When I was president, we had about 600 members, and today we have well over 800, so we're growing quite quickly. We are an international organization. We have chapters in the Philippines, we have chapter in England, and of course the United States. But we have doing a lot of work with the UN, and we're trying to change the way the world sees mercury and fluoride. So you'll learn about fluoride this afternoon in our periodontal techniques. But just want you to have an open mind, because this is going to be a bit different, and it was for me too. But I've learned to adapt it, and that's what we do as a practice. I also got to tell you, it's not to do it for this reason, but it is a practice builder. Our patients, 80% of them, I suppose, come in because they recognize that we can remove mercury safely. It's not a treatment plan you got to sell. They come in wanting to get this done. Sometimes insurance is an issue because they only have so much a year. But generally, they just say, look, I don't care. I'm going to get this out of my mouth. So it's really nice to work with people who are motivated to get their dentistry done and appreciate what you do. So, you know, I used to call these guys the whacks and the crackos, but because they would come in knowing a lot more than I did about mercury and its toxicity, and I was kind of like, what the heck are you talking about? And I kind of boo-hooed them. These people they take more time. You're going to have to spend a lot more time with them because they understand the issues of mercury better than you might right now. And so you just have to have an open mind, listen to them, and there's a great group of people to work with. They're appreciative. They bring you cookies. They get you hugs. And I don't usually get that out of a dental patient. So I want to say this is probably the best thing that ever happened to my practice and to me. Pankey Institute was another one. And the coaching program was probably the third. But this changed my life. And I'll show you a little bit more as we go on here. All right, this is some of the history. The Academy was founded in 1984, and these are the original members. Some of them are still with us, and some of them attend the meetings regularly, but it's a nonprofit organization. We're now over 800 members. Show me the science is our motto, We're not interested in just feelings or thoughts or, the idea that mercury is in the filling, but there's not enough there to bother you. We know there is. Biocompatibility is another issue. Education and research. We've funded a lot of research over the years to not only in mercury, but also in fluoride. We've got study after study after study. We don't need any more studies to show people that mercury is in fact toxic. We know it's toxic. Fluoride's toxic. It's just a question of getting it out to the public. And we feel like once the public understands our position, the patients will change. And that's what's happening, because people see in glamour magazines and all these other, cosmetic dentistry is the thing. Nobody wants these black, ugly fillings in the back of their mouth. But we feel like by changing the environment, knowing that mercury, and we'll talk about this more, mercury going into the environment from the mercury fillings in people's mouths is polluting the environment. And we'll discuss that a little bit later. So there's an environmental issue and then there's a health issue. And I don't think you can separate the two, because in the environment is part of your health problem. So if we can get mercury out of people's mouths and quit using it, then the world will be a better place. Hit two buttons at once. This is our current membership. This is Mark here. He's our immediate past president. Tammy is our current president, and she will be replaced. Is Tammy in here? Oh, there she is. Just came in the door. All right. She's our immediate president and will be replaced, unfortunately. I know he said replaced. But at any rate, Matt Young here will come in Saturday and become our new president. Jack Call, he's standing in the back corner there. He's our chairman of the board. Nobody works harder in this academy than Jack does, I can tell you that. So we appreciate all of them. I happen to be secretary, as mentioned, and Joe walking past here is our treasurer, who does an extremely great job. We don't have a picture of Mike Reamy, but all right, but at any rate, Mike's probably in the building, but probably not here. The IAOMT is a trusted academy of allied professionals providing scientific resources to support new levels of integrity and safety in healthcare. So, as I mentioned, mercury and fluoride are not things that are going to make you healthy. The information you hear at our meeting is derived from science, delivered by clinicians, researchers, scientists, and health professionals that are committed to improving and making healthcare safer for patients and the environment. So we got the patients and the environment thing. If it's in the patient, it's in the environment. Biologic dentistry and the IAOMT. Biologic dentistry is not a separate recognized specialty. It's not a prosthodontist or periodontist thing, but it's thought process and an attitude that can apply to all facets of general dentistry and to healthcare in general, to always seek the safest, least toxic way to accomplish the goals of modern dentistry and contemporary healthcare. Okay, so this is the science of mercury. Now, all of us have had chemistry, so you'll remember a lot of this, maybe some of it, but it's going to review a little bit. This is me in Joe's home about 5-6 years ago, and I first found out about the dangers of mercury from the IAOMT, but after learning that so many years ago, I had an aunt that was my mother's sister who lives up in Pennsylvania on the Schuylkill River area up there, but she came down to visit in North Carolina, and she had Lou Gehrig's disease. My grandmother, who I never knew, she died before I was born, my mother thought she had MS, but as my Aunt Vi was dying, my mom said the symptoms were exactly the same, so diagnosis wasn't so good back then. But my grandmother had Lou Gehrig's. Now, since that time, 3 of my cousins, my Aunt Vi's children, have died of Lou Gehrig's. So to me, it was a question of, I'm either going to change professions or I'm going to change how I do dentistry, or get out of dentistry or change how I do dentistry. And I chose to change how I do dentistry. And that's what really motivated me to get in and find out about what's going on. And the fact is that mercury is very toxic and very dangerous to us, particularly with neurological diseases. So that's how I got into it. And I told you a little bit at my first IAOMT meeting was very strange, but it got me. I got past it, and I'm here, and I'm happy I am. The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, Carl Sagan says. So in other words, if just because you can't prove something absolutely true doesn't make it's not true, it can still be true. And we've got a lot of research, as I said, in the academy. Go into the website and look at it. It's a lot of information, but it's very worthwhile. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. I'm not sure that was Wayne Dyer, but we'll give him credit for that. It's not what you don't know that gets you in trouble. It's what you know for sure that ain't so. That does sound like Will Rogers.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Is mercury toxic?
Elemental mercury is toxic.
Silver amalgam filling, does it contain mercury?
It does.
Almost up to 50%.
Yes?
Mercury is a toxic substance.
A lot of us have dental amalgams that contain mercury. Anywhere from 4 to 19 micrograms of mercury per day can leach out of your amalgams into your body.
A single filling delivers micrograms of mercury, which in mercury terms is a lot.
Mercury is vaporizing from the amalgams, and you have 80% absorption through the lungs. This is a fairly dangerous scenario.
Dentists go to dental school, they're taught that mixed dental amalgam is completely inert.
They taught us nothing about protecting the staff from the dangers of mercury vapor.
The amount of mercury vapor that's released from amalgam restorations is so minute.
And so when a dentist goes in to grind out an amalgam filling, he is creating tremendous quantities of mercury particulate.
Their dental drill runs at about 400,000 RPM, and it sends a shower of micron size and submicron size particles everywhere. It's tens of thousands of parts per million. I've never seen levels of mercury this high. That's pretty much unheard of in any type of work environment.
When a woman is pregnant, we hope that she's never exposed to mercury vapor because we know that it can pass the placenta and cause neurological problems in the unborn baby.
Everyone working around hazardous chemicals and other toxic substances has a right to know of possible dangers and how to protect themselves.
When patients see us dressed like this, there's no way they could believe mercury is safe in their mouths.
If you're exposed to mercury, we start seeing much more serious health effects. These health effects would be
chronic fatigue, double vision,
Couldn't sleep, depression,
panic attacks, memory loss,
a lowered immune system,
loss of vision,
chronic headaches.
It's both an immediate problem in some individuals and a very long-term problem in others.
I started having neurological symptoms.
I didn't feel like a human being.
And in the deepest part of myself, I thought I was dying.
People think you're crazy, and you're not crazy. You have mercury poisoning.
They'll evacuate a public building for a broken thermometer, but each one of your amalgam fillings has about the same amount of mercury.
2 schools will be closed tomorrow after a custodian finds a small amount of mercury on the floor of a room at Hickman Mills High School.
Now, how much mercury are we talking about? Not very much. About the amount the size of the eraser on this pencil, but school officials explained to us it would only take the amount of mercury about the size of the sharpened end of this pencil to contaminate the entire building.
The toxin that can do the effect, you have it placed within inches of your brain.
They've never done any safety studies on this product.
Why is it that the ADA will not tell the public that mercury amalgam is harmful?
Frankly, the American Dental Association welcomes new looks at all of the dental restorative materials.
The American people are being overtly lied to by the American Dental Association and the dental branch of the Food and Drug Administration.
Kind of compelling. Yeah, I mean, how many of us as kids would break a thermometer and play with the mercury, bounce around and watch it scatter all over the floor and never even thought about it. I mean, we'd shine up pennies with it and do all kinds of crazy stuff. And, even the fact now that, you can't have a mercury thermometer in a school. You can't have a mercury thermometer in a hospital. Any of that stuff's all gone because of the dangers of mercury. And if you were to have a mercury contamination in a school building, just as much mercury is in one mercury filling, the building is evacuated. Hazmat comes in and cleans it up. But yet we're running around with this mercury in our mouth. That doesn't make a lot of sense. And we're breathing it constantly. But I'm getting ahead of myself. History of mercury. Mercury-containing silver paste. The Chinese in the 7th century took copper, tin, and silver filling, or shavings, and combined it into a paste called amalgam, which is basically what we're using. So that was the 7th century that was used, and I don't know what they used it for, but they found out that it worked that way. In 1816, Auguste Travaux created the first amalgam filling by combining elemental mercury with shavings from silver coins. And I always tell the story that's why when you see like a quarter or a $50, they've got the ridges around the sides of the coins. Nickels don't, and I don't think dimes do, but maybe they do. Pennies don't, because what they used to do is shave that coin, the circumference of it, and collect the silver back when coins had silver or gold in them. So you could shave that off and get it, and still that coin was still valuable. So as tender. So that's what they used to do to create their silver. In 1833, the Krakows, two French brothers, immigrated from Europe to New York and brought amalgam to the United States. And they were kind of the first, I guess, corporate dentistry, you might say. They set up a clinic and they were interested in making some money, which, not a bad thing. But the first amalgam war started in 1833 when the Krakows introduced mercury fillings. Now, the history of dental, you guys probably know the reason that barbers used to be dentists is because they're the only ones that had chairs that went back, which was easy to do an extraction with. So they were kind of the first dentists and also did some bloodletting. Amalgam fillings have been placed in millions of teeth for nearly 200 years. And if for no other reason, maybe we ought to have a new product other than mercury or amalgam fillings to use in dentistry. In the 1850s, the American Society of Dental Surgeons banned the use of mercury fillings for its members. They weren't allowed to use it because they knew it was dangerous. But the guys who decided, hey, I'm going to do something and use these mercury fillings, because obviously they're easy and it's something you can plug into a tooth fairly easily. They decided they were going to continue to use mercury. So the pro-mercury people at that time founded the ADA in 1859. Now, the American College of Dental Surgeons, who were banned or against mercury fillings, called these guys who use mercury quack because of the quacksilver is a German name for mercury. So it's interesting that sometimes years ago, we used to be called quacks for not using it, but originally the quack came from people who used mercury fillings. And man as a hatter was used to describe hat makers who were poisoned by the mercury. They'd get over there and they'd be stirring this great big vat of mercury chloride, I think it was, and then they'd run some felt through that, or some wool, to make felt for shoes or hats or whatever. And these people were just weird, just out. They were crazy. And because of the mercury vapor they were exposed to all the time. So in 1941, mercury was in a hat baking business was banned, and in all other areas since then. So then there was a second amalgam war. Alfred Stock was a German chemist and pharmacologist, and he did a lot of work in consuming mercury himself to define the different aspects. The more mercury you had, he would describe the symptoms he would have. And he recognized mercury fillings were a dangerous source of mercury exposure. You can imagine that the technology they had in 1926 wasn't too sophisticated, but he could still measure this. In 1931, the German chemist Borinsky documented the daily excretion of mercury in feces and urine after placement of dental mercury fillings on himself. So back in the 1930, we knew that mercury coming into the mouth was coming into the mouth was also coming out. The controversy lasted 13 years until World War II broke out, and the world had more important things to think about at that time. So Germany or Europe was involved in a war. Of course, the United States was too, but that research kind of stopped. Third amalgam war, Dr. Pinto from Brazil and Hal Huggins. You ever heard about Hal Huggins? Yeah, he was influential in this academy. Have anybody ever come out to see him? Yeah, okay. Really a fascinating guy. He's not with us anymore, but he was at our last time we saw him was Griffin was in Austin, and he's since passed. But he was certainly a great influencer on people to not use mercury fillings. So he told us about mercury toxicity back in the 1980s, which was really weird back then because nobody was believing at that time. Matt Hansen, Swedish neurobiologist, in 1982 again explained mercury poisoning from dental amalgam. And then the IAOMT was formed in 1984 with the goal of producing science to convince dentists to eliminate mercury, and was not very well received. And the controversy continues today. Probably 50% of the dentists don't use mercury anymore because of cosmetic reasons, but it's not a question of whether you're placing it, which you shouldn't be, but more importantly, how you remove it. That's the key. So we'll be talking about more of that later with Joe. A few key dates in the dental amalgam wars. In 1926, chemists Aberstock defined micromercurialism. Berinsky discovered urine and fecal excretion of mercury after placement of fillings in 1931. 1980, Pinto in Brazil, Hal Huggins in America reviewed objections to dental mercury. The IAOMT was formed in 1984. 2000, a number of countries banned, reduced dental mercury in Norway, Sweden, Denmark. Mercury's banned. They no longer teach it in Japan, but Europe is moving to get that out of people's mouths and out of the environment. And then in 2013, UNEP called for a global phase down of mercury, down on mercury, including dental mercury, which is pretty unique. And the United States signed that agreement. Significant dates in dental amalgam uses again. 1984, the National Institute of Dental Research and the ADA acknowledged mercury might be released from amalgam fillings. Well, it is being released, and they recognize that. It is released. And we'll show you some information on that in a bit. The ADA enacted a resolution, still part of their code of ethics today, prohibiting dentists from removing mercury fillings for toxicological reasons. Well, you don't have to have a toxicological reason. If you've got an intraoral camera, you can demonstrate on 99% of those fillings there's cracks in the teeth. And for no other reason. So there's two reasons to remove mercury. Number one, it's toxic. Number two, it's going to break your teeth. I mean, look at 6-year molars, lower 6-year molar. I mean, number one tooth to have a crown on it. Number one tooth to have a root canal. Why? Because when you're 6 years old, you're not brushing your teeth. They come in at 6, they're more susceptible to decay. So if you put a mercury filling in a tooth, it's my opinion that tooth is eventually going to break. They do. So many people come in to me and say, Doc, I was just eating ice cream or I was eating mashed potatoes and my tooth broke. Well, I show them with the intraoral camera, your tooth was broken before. I can show them the other fillings. It just came apart then. So if for no other reason not to use mercury would be, it's going to break your teeth, it's toxic. And it goes into the environment. 2009, the FDA, Center for Devices and Radiation Health, officially classified dental amalgam filling as a Class 2 device, unfortunately. Moderate risk, no proofs of safety required. And then 2016, EPA is currently proposing standards for discharges of dental pollutants into publicly owned wastewater treatment plants. Now, we'll talk about this a bit later, but it's estimated 40 to 60% of mercury in streams and rivers comes from dental offices. That's a lot of mercury. Because how many have a mercury separator? Good. That's great. That's great. Well, you've got to get one of those, or otherwise you are polluting the environment. And that mercury sent off to mine goes up to Washington, and there's several different separators you can find. Some of our exhibitors will have them, but get a separator. Don't let this go out into the environment. And the FDA has really been boo-hooing and slowing. They're really slow in getting this stuff done. Fundamentals of mercury. Well, we all know it's a heavy metal. Atomic weight is 200.59. It's heavy. Liquid. It's the only metal known to be liquid at room temperature, and it's fun to play with. It's a gas. It's colorless, odorless, tasteless. The gas is. You don't know you're being exposed to mercury vapor. How many people in the past, I used to kid, we used to go with our BB guns and 22s. They used to have dumps, where you took your trash and dumped it. They weren't landfills. They were just like places where you dump stuff. We used to have so much fun going shooting fluorescent light bulbs. But now I wouldn't think about it. I just did had a pharmacy move into the other half of my building. I had probably 3 or 4 years of fluorescent light bulbs stored over there. It was vacant at the time. And I didn't know what to do with them because you can't throw them away. It cost me $156 to have them recycled at the local recycling station. So they do charge you to do this, but you got to do it. And it vaporizes very easily above 10 degrees. So if it's just sitting there, if you have some mercury on the floor, you have some mercury on your table, it'll be gone in a period of time because it vaporizes. Heavy metal, okay, let's see, we did this one. And very reactive. It oxidizes very, very easily. It lends electrons and binds into particularly sulfur, so bad actor. Ionic forms of mercury. Mercury loses electrons by oxidation, kind of like rusting. Elemental mercury from either liquid or vapor is 80% absorbed in the lungs. So as you're drilling these mercury fillings out and the patient's breathing, 80% of that mercury vapor that they inhale will be absorbed into the lungs. In the lungs, it crosses the blood-brain barrier. It's not charged. Moderate uptake in the intestines. So if you got mercurous, so you lost an electron, there's 79 electrons there. Mercury, mercuric, of course, has 2 electrons lost. And it's inorganic mercury salt formed by oxidation of mercury, which oxidizes very easily. Poor uptake in the intestines. Poor mobility, does not cross the blood-brain barrier, and causes inflammation in the gut. So a lot of this stuff settles in the gut. Then you have yeast problems and antibiotic resistance. So that's a topic for another day, but you got to be concerned about that. More and more you hear about probiotics and the importance of the gut. Well, we know the gut's very, very responsible for a lot of our immune function, and so it's called the second brain. So if you don't have a healthy gut, you can't truly be healthy. So if you've got mercury in your gut, you've probably got yeast, and you're not functioning at full capacity. And the important thing about that, if you're going to resist MS or a heart attack or the flu or a cold or whatever you're going to get, you got to have the immune system really, really pumping. And methylmercury, formed by bacterial synthesis in the mouth and gut, 95% uptake in the intestines, good mobility, and crosses the blood-brain barrier. So methylmercury is a bad actor. And you got ethyl mercury, and that's the thimerosal that they use to put in vaccines to preserve it. What it does, thimerosal is an agent. It's toxic, so it kills the bacteria that could be in the vial of the vaccine. So, it functions of purpose because it's toxic, it kills the bacteria, but then they inject it in you, you're getting ethyl mercury into your bloodstream. And that's one of the concerns we have. I know the AMA's come out and said, there's no connection between autism or any of the other diseases with mercury. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. We'll show you some statistics that will maybe change your mind on that. But, you can do a study and come up with any result you want. It just depends on what you want to do when you start the study. All right, what is methylation? Unique factor related to mercury exposure and individual response. Bacteria in the soil and water can convert mercury from the environment into methyl mercury, which is why pregnant women and children have been advised to restrict consumption of certain types of seafood. Well, seafood's one avenue to get the mercury, but as I'll show you later, it's a very small avenue, and it's not nearly as important as the mercury in your mouth. Other forms of mercury might be altered into methyl mercury inside the human body. Studies have documented the ability of mercury in the human system, such as that from amalgam fillings, to be transformed into methyl mercury in the mouth and by specific strands of yeast bacteria in the gut. So again, the connection between yeast and good bacteria and bad bacteria in the gut and mercury. Let me take a sip here. It's dry out here. Anybody from Florida? Nobody? Ooh, okay. Just updating on the hurricane here. Watching that this morning is scary. And we live in North Carolina. It's supposed to come right up through the Carolinas, so it'll be interesting. Why the issue of methylation is essential to consider. Because humans are exposed to inorganic mercury from dental amalgams, food, and industrial pollutants. Potential mercury methylation by the human gut microbe would have tremendous health implications, again, going back to the immunity factor and a healthy gut. Role of selenium. Selenium has the strongest affinity for mercury. Sulfur probably next, but selenium is very high. If mercury binds to selenium before it enters the body, it will be less toxic. And that's one of the reasons why you can eat fish. The fish aren't bothered by the mercury because they have a lot of selenium in them. Seafood, I'm talking about, ocean fish. Maybe, I don't know if it's the same with freshwater fish. But, excuse me, I got a tickle. But if mercury binds to selenium before it enters the body, it will be less toxic. The mercury in the fish is bound to selenium by and large. So eating the flesh of the fish, and mostly in the neuro system of the fish. So it's not as effective as just the mercury vapor on amalgam fillings. If mercury binds to selenium after it enters the body, it will be more difficult to remove. So if it's in your body and it binds to selenium, it's going to be hard to get out, because what we're trying to do is go in and chelate, not physicians personally, dentists personally, but physicians are going in with our patients and chelating them. In other words, we're getting the mercury out, the physicians are getting the mercury out of the body. So, you don't ever try to do chelation by yourself unless your state has some really lax rules. In North Carolina, that's a physician's job. So we don't even consider that. Are mercury-contaminated fish toxic? Selenium is an antioxidant which binds oxygen and protects against free radical damage from certain chemicals that can cause cancer. So selenium is good to have. Fish are high in selenium. Mercury binds to the selenium, which provides protection to the fish and makes the selenium-bound mercury harder for humans to absorb. So the idea being, well, why aren't the fish all dying because of the mercury? Well, they bind that mercury, but it's still in the meat and in the neurological system. Mercury in fish has already reacted with proteins and other protective molecules. The mercury bound to selenium is not as toxic as an equal amount of the pure equivalent. So if you do eat fish, the mercury eating from the fish is not as effective, not as disruptive to you as if you had just mercury vapor coming off your fillings. Fish bind mercury to selenium, which is a stronger bond than the sulfhydryl groups or thiol groups for mercury toxicity. Genetic unsusceptibility and synergistic effects happen. Mercury's affinity for sulfur, what forms a covalent bond with sulfur, which is a very strong bind, and more than 99% of enzymes contain sulfur. So 99% of your enzymes are sulfur containing. Mercury will bind to sulfur groups and disrupt the function of the enzymes. Many of these sulfur-containing groups have detoxification functions. So what we're saying is that once mercury binds to the enzyme is no longer functioning. It doesn't do what it's supposed to do. You got a key that goes into a keyhole in these systems. Once the mercury is bound to that, the key never doesn't fit anymore. So the enzyme is ineffective. So if you get measured for that enzyme, it's still there, but it doesn't work. And as it says here, a lot of these functions are for detoxification. So once you bind up the sulfhydryl groups or the enzymes with mercury, you're not detoxifying. You are containing and keeping the mercury in your body. And it has an affinity for thionine, cysteine. When mercury binds to an enzyme, the enzymes no longer function. That's what we're saying. Relative toxicity of heavy metals. Well, number one is mercury. Now, when I was a kid, my dad had a Texaco gas station. Well, he was a steam turbine engineer earlier, but he decided to quit traveling the world, and for some reason he decided to get a Texaco gas station. I never understood that conversion, but so as a kid I used to pump gas, and we used to clean parts in leaded gas. I mean, that was just what it was. Everything was leaded gas, so when I go in for chelation, the first thing they look at me is, I got a tremendous amount, or had a tremendous amount of lead. So that's what the physician starts taking out with EDTA and different things to remove the lead. Then you get down to the mercury and stuff. But you can see here in this list that mercury is more toxic than cadmium. Now, we know cadmium is a bad actor. Look at arsenic. We thought arsenic was the worst. It's just, it kills people when you drink it. Mercury is more toxic than thallium and lead. Isn't that weird? Lead's a fifth on the list. And here it's out of paint. It's out of, I guess it's out of every paint. I don't know if they still use leaded paint for bolt holes or not. I don't know if they do, but they actually used to use mercury in paint to keep it from fouling or getting the fungus and the green stuff from growing. And this is a cover from a Time magazine back in the 80s. So we were discovering it. And I remember I used to paint houses in dental school and undergraduate to get through. And we had leaded paints at those times, and just thought when they took the lead out, we thought, oh my God, we can't paint anything anymore. It's not going to work. Kind of like when gloves became part of, half of you don't remember when gloves became part of dentistry. I'm sure you just automatically used them. Well, we were convinced you couldn't do dentistry with putting gloves on. It just wouldn't happen. But somehow or another we got over that, and we got over the use of lead. heavy metal synergy. What happens when you combine the lethal dose, LD's lethal dose, 1 and mercury, the lethal dose of mercury and lead combined? It is 100 times more toxic than either one of them separately. So you're reading about things up in, was it not Flint, Michigan, with lead in the water from the pipe. What they used to do, I used to work with a plumber, and I did everything. Used to work with a plumber in high school on the weekends, and we'd go into these crawl spaces and we'd be soldering copper pipe, and which they didn't have PVC and those things back then. And you could look through like the opening to the crawl space, and you just can see lead vapor just kind of coming out. It was just a smoky haze in there. Never thought about it. It's just smoky in here. But, lead plus the mercury is 100 times more toxic than either one of them alone. So this is a synergistic effect. Current exposure matters. It's a little bit hard to read. This slide is. It's all about synergy. Exposures to other metals and chemicals can also influence how a person responds to mercury. Not everybody responds the same way. I've got patients who got a mouthful of mercury fillings and they're 90 years old and they're doing just fine. And there's reasons for that. And I've got people who've had a couple mercury fillings placed and they've noticed a difference in how they feel. People come in with root canals and I developed breast cancer, I came down with MS, and you go, well, when were your symptoms started? And usually sometime not long after that root canal was placed or that mercury filling was placed or removed improperly. So you can connect these things for time and kind of, I guess you could call it dose, but we're all different, and some of us can chelate this stuff out and some of us can't. So not every person's going to be affected the same way. We know that. I'm allergic to poison ivy. Maybe you're not. But we're sitting as practitioners in a very high concentration of mercury vapor. And if you don't have the proper tools, which Joe will talk about later, and the exhibit halls will have plenty of this stuff. Exhibitors are really good here. They're really a lot of good fun stuff to look at. But you got to really start thinking about this for your own sake, if not the patients and your assistants. I mean, good God. My staff's been with me for, not as long as I've been there, 30 plus years. And, that's the other thing that, they've been there not only because of my charming personality, but I'm sure that's the main reason. But, they wouldn't think about going to another dentist and work if they don't practice these kind of principles because they don't want to be exposed to the mercury vapor. So it's something that you need to consider, that how toxic is your office. If you've got a plume of mercury vapor going up all the time, everything's coated. We did this, Joe and I helped Joe and Maddie with a study for over a weekend. He'll talk about that a little bit later. But man, we had mercury readings in his office that were off the chart and scared us to death. Now we all had respirators on, but that was still too scary. All right, Tom McGuire, the poison in your teeth. This is Tom McGuire. He's also one of our exhibitors. Good guy to know, good guy to talk to. He's got a website that's real helpful. Mercury is the most poisonous, non-radioactive, naturally occurring substance on the planet. So that puts it up there with plutonium, because plutonium is radioactive. There is no safe or harmless level of mercury. Just 1 atom of mercury is harmful to the body. But everybody's different. You may not be affected as much as somebody else. But there's no way to quantify how much is enough or how much is too much. The ADA's point is that we don't know how much will affect you. Well, 1 atom of mercury can affect an enzyme system. So it's important that you not think of it, well, I don't think 3 fillings is okay, but 8's too many, 1's too many. There's no safe or harmless level of mercury. Just 1 atom of mercury is harmful. Amalgam fillings continuously release poisonous mercury vapor. We'll show you this in a bit. But the whole time that mercury filling is in there, from the time it's placed to the time it breaks the tooth and something else is done, that filling is releasing mercury vapor. So every time you breathe in, you're breathing mercury vapor. Every time you exhale, you're breathing mercury vapor into the room so your family can all enjoy that. So it's important that you not have it in your mouth. And of course, you shouldn't have it in anybody's mouth for that matter. But I'm a little prejudiced on that. All right. What do I do here, guys? Dave? I'm not seeing it with that light. Can you help me a second? You got to. Here's... Okay, here's the slide I want, and here's half of it there. Let's click on it. Okay. Yeah.
So then you just press play.
Oh, okay. I wasn't understanding what you meant there. Okay. Thank you. Dave's one of our members and probably the smartest guy in the room here. Except for me, of course. But no, he's our wizard. He's an amazing guy. He helping the guys back there set up all this equipment, and I don't know how they do it. I can't even run the computer, and he's got all the systems set up. So, mercury fillings are the single greatest source of mercury exposure. This is according to Tom McGuire, and we're not arguing. The first exposure to mercury from mercury fillings can occur at any moment of conception. So, if mom's got mercury fillings in her mouth, mercury is going to be in the baby. Mercury passes through the placenta to the fetus and through breast milk to the nursing baby. So we always tell our dentist to never ever remove a mercury filling unless it's an emergency, even all the precautions we use on a pregnant or nursing mother. You just don't want to do that. Wait till the nursing stops, wait till the pregnancy's over, then proceed with mercury removal, unless it's an emergency and you've got to do something to get her out of pain. Chronic mercury poisoning can directly and indirectly contribute to and increase the risk and severity of every known disease and health issue. Now, this isn't just our opinion. This is becoming science. Number of mercury atoms in a microgram. Well, this is 1 ounce, okay? We know what an ounce is. 1 ounce contains 28 grams, okay? 1 gram is 1,000 milligrams, mg. 1 milligram, which is 1/1000th of a gram, is 1,000 micrograms. Well, atoms of mercury in 1 microgram. Now look at this, 1,000 micrograms. Okay, this is what's crazy. Atoms of mercury in 1 microgram is 4 trillion. So that's a lot of atoms in a very, very small amount of mercury that can go in and affect the enzymes we talked about. So, it's not a question of you got to swallow a half cup of this. It's a question of you just have to have a very small amount that's going to affect your body in somehow. Now here's, excuse me, let me take another sip here. This is an interesting slide. This is an old slide that done in 97, but the science doesn't change on this. This is a photomicrograph of amalgam. Now what you're going to see here, hope I can do this without turning the system off. This is the surface of the amalgam. Okay, this is all amalgam here. But what this is unmixed mercury. So this is the mercury globule. And what it's doing as the amalgam filling wears down, these are exposed to the surface. You can see right there. And that's where the mercury is coming off of it. I told you I'd do something crazy. There. Nope. There. So that's how the mercury is being exposed in the mouth. It's by the wearing down of this and the exposure of the undistributed mercury in the amalgam. Because it's not a complete mixture. It's kind of like, we used to make composites. Half you won't know this, but you had 2 pastes you mixed together and kind of got it into the filling. Now, it's a whole different thing. But you knew there was only so much of this got mixed and only some of it was going to cure. Kind of like Bondo to a certain extent. I didn't do that. But now with light cured composites, we don't worry about that so much. Of course, the depth of the light's important, but that's how the mercury's coming off the fillings. Amalgam mercury fillings are often referred to as silver fillings. We call them mercury fillings because 50% of that filling is mercury. And according to the Food and Drug Association, if you have a product that's, they've listed, the product is listed in the order of the, how much corn is in it, sugar, whatever else is in there. So it's 50% mercury. So it's comprised of 50% elemental mercury, 50% combination of silver, copper, tin, and zinc. Well, every manufacturer's got a different ratio of that. The copper and tin are put into, control expansion, was that what it was, or creep, we used to call it. Created by a mixture of process referred to as titration. You all have had titurators or saw one, or has anybody in this room never been with a titurator? No? Okay, so we all, someday I'll see our hands raised because, dental schools hopefully won't be teaching this stuff anymore. created by a mixing process for titration, a major reason biological dentistry is needed. I went to Indiana, and Ralph Phillips was our dental materials professor. And boy, I can remember, he always, after lunch, and this guy spoke so softly and so there was no influence in his voice, and just sleeping there trying to stay awake. My God, it was difficult. But at any rate, that was many years ago. Chemistry and the FDA tells us when combining many components, the component should be named based on the largest ingredient. Okay, that's the FDA. And what's the largest ingredient in amalgam filling? Mercury. It's a mercury filling. That's why we call them mercury fillings. I don't use the word amalgam. I don't use the word silver. I call them mercury fillings. And I had a bit of trouble with the board several years ago. North Carolina is very, very conservative. And they really don't like us speaking out about mercury. Well, it's more about my colleagues, I think, than it is the board. But I had to go down to Raleigh, spent about $10,000 with an attorney, and defend myself about, calling these mercury fillings. It's like, what? They also didn't like the fact that I had some stuff on my website that alluded to mercury, and as I told you earlier, and different things different symptoms you can have. They didn't like that either. So at any rate, it all came down. I said, okay, I'll take that page off my website, but they want me to call these amalgam fillings. I said, no, I'm not going to call them amalgam fillings. I won't do it. I mean, freedom of speech. They're mercury fillings. So they said, well, how about calling them something like silver amalgam fillings? No. So we finally, they gave up. I guess I was obstinate enough, and so they allowed me to use mercury fillings. But be careful. In your state, I don't want anybody to get in trouble. The number one thing you need is a license. So, you don't need to be bad-mouthing dentists for using this. You don't need to be. I just tell them, look, mercury's going to either break your teeth and you're inhaling the mercury. Okay, boom. I leave it at that. I don't get into the science too much unless they want to talk about it. As I said earlier, a lot of these folks are really, really informed. They get the stuff off the web. We got a couple different patients. We advertise differently. We had a radio advertising, which brings in people who kids are out of school now, and they got time to spend, and they got time to spend on themselves. So we advertise to them. But the biggest drawer of biological patients is the website. If your website's not tuned specifically for biological dentistry, you're going to miss a lot of these people. And as I said, when they come in, they're not going to argue about needs an onlay or a filling, blah, blah, blah. I show them the cracks, and I show them it needs an onlay, and they're already signed up for this. So, but you've got to know enough about them to talk intelligently to them, because I said it alluded to earlier. I guess I was a little offended years ago when somebody would come in and know more about something than I did. It was like, are you kidding? I'm the doctor here. But in fact, they did know a lot more than I did. So I had to catch up with them. But you'll find they know what they're doing and they know what they're looking for. And if you don't use the protocol that Joe's going to teach a little bit later, they know it. And say, you didn't use a dam, or, you're not going to use suction under the dam, or all that kind of stuff. They're up on. So you've got to do this right, or they won't get their work done. I digress. Directions for use to disperse alloy. This is on the package. That's an old boy. I think that was out when I graduated in 79 and 80. They can't use it in expectant mothers, children 6 and under, in proximal or occlusal contact to dissimilar metals. Whew, I see mercury under crowns all the time. And I was taught that in dental school. Patients with severe renal deficiency, mercury is really a bad actor with kidneys, and patients with known allergies to mercury are amalgam. I don't know in my practice who's allergic to mercury, but it's been estimated something like 8 to 10% of the population is allergic. Baylor did a study and found that 33% of the dental students in the class were allergic to mercury. That sounds really high, but that was Baylor that said that. And they have no reason. They're not like biological dental school or anything. So, okay. For retrograde or endodontic fillings, man, let's put a bunch of that stuff up in the bone. I don't see many of those anymore. I don't have any retrograde fillings, because if a root canal fails, we get it out and put an implant in. Now that stuff is kind of like hopefully gone to treat an endo. As a filling material for cast crowns, I guess they're referring to underneath the crown as a buildup. Never, ever. We don't have mercury in the office. Haven't had it in 20 years, so it's not even something I could go to if I wanted to. Okay, the safety data sheets. formerly known as the MSDS sheets, I still call them that, are required by OSHA to protect workers by supplying them with the most crucial facts about the hazardous materials at their job site, including the physical properties of the material, proper storage and handling techniques, known health risks, and essential emergency procedures. My staff know all that stuff, so that's something that you need to look into. Manufacturer of amalgam fillings must create these information sheets. All right. Well, the toxicology information, chronic health effects. Inhalation of mercury vapors, dust or organic vapors, or skin absorption, Joe will talk about that a little bit later, of mercury over long periods can cause mercurialism. Symptoms include tremors, inflammation, mouth and gum, excess salivation, stomatitis, blue lines on the gum, blue tattoos. You know, we used to taught that was from the burr was spinning so fast, it spun the amalgam into the tissue. No, it's not coming from that. It's coming from mercury under a crown somewhere. It's a galvanic reaction. Okay, depression. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. This is what I had kind of a list like this on my website. And, you know, I'm sure some of these people have had symptoms like this. I can't tell you every one of these symptoms is coming from mercury, but there's a lot of things that people suffer with from mercury. Also, you got liver and brain, peripheral nervous system, central nervous. You talked earlier about the little slideshow we had. The people who are members of this academy you were seeing, many of them were members and some of them are here, that actually went through this. That's why they got in the academy, because they were mercury toxic and got chelated, and now they're back. But because of this academy, they are able to function and do dentistry. Did I just do that one? Yeah. All right. First aid measures and insulation. Adverse symptoms may include the following. Again, reduced fetal weight, increased in fetal deaths, skeletal malformation, salivation, metallic taste, eye irritation, respiratory tract infections, fever, nausea, vomiting, excuse me, diarrhea, cramps, pain, muscle. I mean, it goes through the whole gamut. So I'm not sure every one of these is in fact possible, but this is coming from Kerr. So if Kerr says this about their product, you got to kind of wonder if it's not true, because they're not going to say anything they don't have to say. Okay, Henry Schein. Hazardous identification classification. Very toxic. So that's one thing you said. Now, these are the people who are manufacturing and selling this stuff. Very toxic by inhalation. Toxic may cause harm to the unborn child. Toxic dangers of serious damage to the health by prolonged exposure through inhalation. Well, prolonged exposure is that mercury filling in that tooth. That's prolonged exposure. Disposal consideration must not be disposed of together with household garbage. Do not allow products to reach sewage systems. Wow. I mean, there's only half of us maybe that have mercury separators. So even by Schein's definition, we should all have mercury separators. And the other fact is, you know, when we were taught in dental school, we had this little jar, had oil in it. You take your excess, which you didn't use, dump it in a jar real quick, screw the cap on. Well, we never thought about that, but you know, if it's okay, it would seem to be, it was okay to put the mercury filling in the tooth. That was fine. But when you remove the mercury filling, all that mercury particle, or that little jar of mercury, was considered toxic. So it's okay when you put it in the mouth, but it's toxic waste when it comes out. In other words, you can't take that stuff and dump it in your backyard. You're not supposed to throw it in the trash. So the question is, how does it become toxic when it's in the mouth? Mercury's okay going in, but it's not okay coming out. So it's toxic both ways. Hey, Dave. All right. Must not be disposed of together household garbage. Well, I'm sure a lot of it is. MSDS sheet again. Chronic long-term exposure, inhalation of mercury vapors cause mercurialism. Findings are extremely variable and include, again, this is more of the same, but I mean, it's a lot of stuff. And I'm not saying every one of these may be becoming from mercury. And again, this one here, it does, it's hard for me to see this, but it does say tattoos there. So that's coming from the mercury. High copper amalgams have increased mercury release. Now that's interesting. This is presents frequent. So a single spill high copper amalgam filling releases roughly 300 micrograms initially, after placement and 782 micrograms of mercury in the first week. That's a lot of mercury. And remember, we talked about how many atoms were in 1 microgram? This is several 100% more mercury than what non-high copper amalgams release during the first few days of placement. 102 micrograms on day 1, 160. So, you're looking at 300 versus 102. You're looking at 782 versus 160. I mean, don't use any of these things. But the high copper amalgams came out when I was coming out of dental school, I guess. I think they were stronger or something. Does anybody remember why they put copper in there? It was a health issue. Ah, well, good. Well, it hasn't worked. Maybe somebody should tell them. All right. Mercury fillings with high copper. 1975, maybe this will tell. High levels of copper were added to amalgam fillings. 1976, increases in autoimmune disorders, specifically onset of ALS. Remember, 5 of my family members are dead from ALS. 76, incidence of multiple sclerosis drastically increased. Scientific studies that have found that high copper amalgams, which are still used today, release much greater amounts of mercury than lower copper amalgams. All right, oral galvanism. Now, everybody knows about oral galvanism. We were taught by Skinner did not, these things create batteries, which they truly do. I'm all the time seeing a gold crown next to an amalgam filling, mercury filling under a gold crown or a porcelain fused metal crown. It happens every day. But galvanism is a direct current of electricity, especially produced by chemical action. Oral galvanism, electric currents produced by chemical action in the mouth. Dental textbooks have included references to oral galvanism. So anyway, you got a wet metal in a salty solution, warm temperature, and you got dissimilar metals. Anybody here is, as a kid chewing, I don't chew gum anymore, but you get a stick of Wrigley's, you didn't get all the gum off of, or the paper off of it. And I had 1 or 2 mercury fillings when I was a kid. You get this little jolt, and what the heck was that? Well, you get the aluminum foil out of your mouth, and that goes away. But I don't know if you all remember, but Lucille Ball was on Johnny Carson one time years ago, because they've been dead a long time. But she was telling Johnny in the audience that she frequently gets radio signals. She can hear music in her head from the radio. And, of course, Johnny, I can remember going, how you would do, like, oh, you're certainly, we believe you. But that's part of the galvanism. That's that when you get that many different metals in your head, you got metal implants, you got gold crowns, you got PFM crowns, you got different brands of mercury fillings in your mouth. You've got a galvanic reaction that's much, much higher than your brain's voltage. So it's something to consider. Now, we don't have mercury, so it's not a consider. The nice thing, I just go around and take all this stuff out. Currents in the oral cavity are measured in microamps. Okay, so you can measure. Has anybody ever used a read meter? Yeah, a couple of us have. Okay. One of Hal Huggins' things, and I used it for years and years and years. But at any rate, it measures the voltage coming off of a gold crown or the mercury crown or a porcelain fused metal or whatever it is. And the theory was that you would start in the quadrant with the highest voltage because that was doing the most damage to the patient electrically. So we don't use that as much anymore because I found that if I measured them at the examination, and then I measured them at the treatment time, and oftentimes that stuff would change. So there's a lot of voltage coming off, but it's not always, the voltage isn't the same on every tooth every time. So we just take out, I try to be a dentist and I take out the ugliest stuff first and what's going to break, and we get them all out. But the brain operates on nanoamps, which is a lot less than the microamps. So your mouth is overwhelming your brain's electrical activity. And that's why, some people, not everybody, can hear radio in their head, which is kind of convenient, really, if you got the right station. Mercury filling through 1,000 times more amperage than your brain does. 1,000 times. That's a considerable amount. And, they're not very far from the brain. A dental materials textbook. This is Skinner and Phillips, both. Skinner was Ralph Phillips. Excuse me, not Skinner, was at Indiana, and of course he was the one that put us to sleep. The insertion of mercury restorations directly in contrast with a gold crown would be contraindicated. Again, You all see mercury fillings right next to a crown. They're under the crowns all the time. In fact, I have a lot of patients come in wanting their mercury out, and they'll go, doc, the same dentist did all this work, and they might have 3 or 4 crowns, maybe have 5, 6 crowns, and they're skeptical that there's mercury left under those crowns. Sometimes on the x-ray, you can tell that it does. Many times you can't. A lot of times they want me to just go ahead and take those crowns off and put new crowns on just to be sure they don't have mercury. Most times they do. So what I tell them is, look, we'll get the mercury out that we can see, and then we'll take a crown off and see if it does or not. If it doesn't, maybe we can assume that the rest don't. But 9 times out of 10, it's got mercury under it, and they want to go ahead and get everything out of there. Okay, mercury in tooth roots, retrograde fill, and jaw bones. 1970, 4-fold increase in the amount of mercury per gram of tissue weight of dentin when a gold crown is placed over a mercury filling. Again, a galvanism.
Here is the potato clock. It's a science project toy that is meant to show the power of combining metals to create electricity. We'll use it today to show the power of combining metals in a person's mouth to create a potato clock in your head.
Can y'all hear that?
There are 2 potatoes, each with a zinc and a copper strip embedded in them. It takes 2 cells of zinc and copper to run this little digital clock. When you hook them all up, the potato clock starts to run. Got it? Here's a variety of dental metals that are embedded in a potato, ready to go. This one is a pure titanium implant. This one is a titanium alloy implant. Here is a lump of amalgam. This one is the remnant of a Maryland bridge, a nickel chromium alloy. Here is the remnant of a crown, porcelain fused to mystery metal. Here is an ingot of high gold content, crown and bridge gold, and here is a bridge of porcelain fused to some kind of yellow crown and bridge gold. Here is one copper and zinc cell, and here is another potato with the variety of dental metals that we just described embedded into it. Let's see what happens when we hook them up. Here is a pure titanium implant, and here is some gold. We get a potato clock. Yes, we are. Here's another gold alloy, and it is lighting up. A mystery gold alloy. And there we go. We get the contact. Here is a titanium alloy implant versus yellow gold, and that lights up the potato clock. Here's some crown and bridge gold. Here's a white gold alloy. And here's some amalgam. And you'll notice that the 2 electronegative metals do not light up the potato clock. Here is a remnant of a Maryland bridge, a nickel chromium alloy. And that lights up the potato clock. And gold, and the white gold. There we go. What about amalgam? Here is a lump of amalgam. What does that do with a pure gold alloy? It's the potato clock.
That's vodka, isn't it?
Your crown and bridge gold, a white gold alloy. What about titanium alloy versus amalgam? No. 2 electronegative metals. We dentists pick metals for people's dental restorations on the basis of their mechanical properties and their durability, but we rarely take into account the electrical properties of the metals. This little demonstration shows how by randomly selecting metals for people's dental restorations, it's the equivalent of creating a potato clock in their heads.
That was Steve Coral. He's been a member of our academy for years. He passed away a couple of years ago, but I'm talking about Dave, and one of the smartest guys in the room. This organization is full of some really, really brainiacs. It's interesting and humbling to be around some of these guys, but this group has the highest IQ, I think, of any dental group I've ever been in. Because my dental school, it's more of, anyway, it's a different group, let me put it that way. You'll learn a great deal. All righty. The first mercury concentration measured after removal of the amalgam was higher than the baseline for 7 of the subjects. Values returned to baseline or below by the next measurement. The increase was attributed to exposure of the subject to additional mercury during grinding of the amalgam. This was an incidental finding in the study, and the values were not included in the final analysis. All right, this is starting to get interesting now. You'll get a little better feel about the mercury release. This study was done quite a while ago. As you can see, 1979, 84, and 85. Measuring would be better today with our techniques than it was then, which would probably only increase the numbers. But this is unstimulated amalgam, meaning they weren't chewing, they weren't grinding, they were just sitting there and breathing, having their mouth open. And the difference in numbers are due primarily to the techniques they used. You can see top, and how many amalgams the person had. So we don't have all that information with us right now. But the point being, you can see how this tops out. And the other is the people, the green thing, there was no mercury in their mouths. So the green bar had no mercury, the blue bar are people with mercury fillings. And they're just sitting there, just minding their own business. And then they had them stimulate, they had them chew. And one study was 15 minutes, and the other Patterson's was 1 minute. But they're chewing gum or chewing something for 15 minutes. Now, what you got to see here is the stimulated chewing was a 13.1, and the unstimulated was 1.76. So let's just look at the big bar, 1.76, 13.1. That's a big difference, and that's because people were chewing and not just having, sitting there with their teeth apart. The point being that if you're chewing anything with a mercury filling in your mouth, you're going to release more mercury. If you're brushing your teeth, you're going to warm that, and we'll show the smoking tooth video. If you brush your teeth, you warm the tooth up and more mercury comes off. If you grind or brux, you're going to release more mercury. If you drink coffee, the heat will bring off more mercury. So there's a big difference between sitting there with one and chewing or stimulating that surface. So this is per day. Unstimulated, this is just measuring for the day. Unstimulated, let's just take the top bar there, 30.4. And stimulated for the day, 226. So that is 30.4 versus 226. So when you stimulate amalgam by grinding, eating, chewing, hot coffee, brushing your teeth, more mercury comes off. And what happens is the filling gets so old, the mercury is all reabsorbed into the body, the filling falls apart, and then you get another one. Now this is measuring in minutes when someone chewed with the mercury filling. Again, we don't know how many fillings they had. It's not so important the number, but I think it's important. You can see the graph here. The chewing, again, I can't see these screens very well. So they're chewing for 30 minutes up to here, and then they stop chewing. Well, the interesting thing here is, okay, it's still not down to the bottom, but even after an hour, mercury is still coming off these fillings at a much greater rate than unstimulated. Articles of interest: mercury vapor inhalation inhibits binding of glutathione or GTP, guanosine triphosphate, to tubulin in rat brains, similar to a molecular lesion in Alzheimer's disease brains. This is done by Boyd Haley, but what it says: mercury vapor inhalation inhibits binding of guanosine triphosphate to tubulin in rat brains. Tubulin gives the axons their structure. So in other words, it's like you might think of it like a vein or an artery. There, blood flows through, well, because you've got a wall. And the same thing, you got to have a wall, a sheath around that axon, or it'll just dissipate the energy, which is the problem with multiple sclerosis. They lose that tubulin sheath. Dental silver tooth fillings, a source of mercury exposure revealed by whole body image. We'll show you this in just a minute by Vinnie Murray and University of Calgary. and whole body imaging of the distribution of mercury released from dental fillings into monkey tissues. This is really interesting. Again, these are fairly old studies, but they're true today. So what Murray Vinnie did, University of Calgary, he put mercury fillings in a sheep. Now, what he did first, he made up a isotope, radioactive isotope of mercury to make the amalgam. Now, radioactive mercury does not exist in the environment. It doesn't happen. You have to make that. So what he did, he put them in the teeth film, the sheep's teeth, and just in the coronal portions, and he let them sit there for 28 days. And then he sacrificed the animal and took a film of where the mercury showed up. And as you can see, the A is the stomach, which is, again, I can't, where's an A? A is down there. Anyway, the point being, you can see the concentrations of where the mercury is. It's in the stomach, it's in the kidneys, it's the jaw, and it's in the liver. Again, you can see it, looking at that, the same distribution. Well, that wasn't good enough for the ADA. They said, look, sheep are a whole lot different than people. I mean, they chew differently. Okay, well, they probably chew a bit differently than we do because they chew grass and things like that. But so he did it on a monkey. They pretty much chew like we do. The same results came up. So the interesting thing, you can see within 28 days where the radioactive mercury settled. So if it's in your teeth, it's in your body. It's a conclusion to this experiment. Dental mercury amalgam in pregnancy with children. Scientific research has shown that the increased number of maternal mercury fillings, if mom has mercury fillings, higher levels of fetus in the fetus and the infants. Increased number of maternal mercury fillings equals increased mercury in breast milk. So remember I said we don't remove mercury fillings unless it's an emergency on pregnant or nursing mothers. Risk assessment equals do not take size or development of children into account. Mercury toxicity, both the Environmental Protection Agency and National Academy of Science state that between 8 and 10% of American women have mercury levels that would render any child they give birth to neurological disorders, autism, maybe a lot of other things, I don't know, but certainly we're hearing a lot about autism. And I might have a slide on this later, but before 1980, when thimerosal was mandated into children's vaccines, and by the way, they gave like 22 vaccines before they were a year old with thimerosal, that the autism rate was less than 1 in 500,000. Now that's less than 1 in 500,000 back in 1980. Today it's greater than 1 in 160. So tremendous difference in that. Now whether this is causing it entirely, we don't know that. It could be a combination of fluoride, could be a combination of lead, could be a combination of a lot of different things in our environment. Our environment's incredibly toxic. So many different toxins in our environment that we live with, eat, breathe, that maybe there's another connection. Based on this prevalence for the overall U.S. population of women of reproductive age and the number of U.S. births each year, it is estimated that more than 300,000 newborns each year may have increased risk of learning disabilities. 300,000 associated with in utero exposure to methylmercury. More recent data from the CDC supports this general finding. When I read stuff like this, I start thinking about Medicare people who have no choice, but their kids go into the clinic and they get mercury fillings. They don't do composites. So a lot of this is kind of going to be more prevalent in lower income population than it would be in the affluent population that are going, oh no, I don't want that mercury filling in my child's mouth. I mean, they get whatever they want, but the kids that can't afford it get mercury fillings. It's just automatic, and their parents do too. The children's amalgam trials, the CAT trials. The CATs are 2 studies conducted in 1997 and 2005 used to defend the use of mercury fillings in children. So these studies were done in Portugal on orphans, and the study was designed to show that the mercury has no effect on children. Well, other researchers came back later and looked at the data and demonstrated factors such as long-term effects, genetic predisposition, and measurement errors could have been taken into account by the CAT. Researchers, including some of the original CAT researchers studying the same cohort, have since identified potential risks to these subjects and mercury exposure based on gender, genetic predisposition, and even gum chewing. So what happened is the results were overturned. And I think that there's plenty of, there is really no place for mercury in children. That's a pediatric neurologist, but that would be our position too. Never. And my pedodontist will not place a mercury fillings in my kids, so this doesn't happen. But a lot of kids, pedodontists still use it. All right, facts from government agency. WHO, World Health Organization, in 1991, again an old study, huh? Dental amalgam is the greatest source of mercury burden in non-occupationally exposed population. That doesn't mean dentists. We are occupationally exposed. The daily exposure from amalgam, according to WHO, is between 3 and 17 micrograms. And being the average mercury vapor exposure per day from amalgams. Remember I said, I'm not suggesting you go out and eat a lot of fish, but the fish is not the problem. It's the mercury fillings in your mouth. And you might have some in your water. You might have some in your air if you're around some kind of coal-burning power plant. Interesting, the EPA has gotten to a point where coal-burning power plants release less mercury than people with mercury fillings in their mouth. Now that may be a good thing, but that's pretty stringent. We can breathe it, but you can't burn it. Health Canada reported in 1996, maximum tolerable daily intake of mercury should be reached with 4 average-sized fillings, 8 surfaces. That's the maximum tolerance to mercury. And based on industrial safety levels. Now here's a chart. Again, a little hard to read maybe from the size of that, but the orange part is dental amalgam. That's how much mercury in total exposure you're getting from amalgam. The blue slice is fish and seafood, and air and water is a little thing, and other foods. So you can see that 90% of the mercury that we're exposed to is coming from our mercury filling, or somebody else in your family that's breathing mercury vapor, sleeping with them or living with them. The mercury's coming out of their body. It comes out of their body in sweat, feces, and urine. But, you could always be around somebody's sweat. A combination of mercury exposures from fish and amalgam. 2013, the European Food Safety Authority panel on contaminants in the food chain explained the estimated exposure to inorganic mercury in Europe from the diet alone does not exceed the tolerable weekly intake. Inhaled elemental mercury vapor from dental amalgams, which after absorption is converted to inorganic mercury, is an additional source that is likely to increase the internal inorganic mercury exposure that the tolerable weekly intake might be exceeded. Might be, huh? All right, this is a graph of different studies. Published estimates of mercury exposure in adults with dental mercury fillings. You can see there's probably 15 of these, 13 of them. And every one, except for a few of them, are way off the chart there. Do that again, Dave. Maybe I think if I can figure this one out this time. I'm tapping. Yeah, I'm trying here. Bottom bar. All right, show me what to do here. That's what I pushed. He's just trying to make me look bad, which isn't difficult. Why mercury-free, mercury-safe, and biological dentistry? Why all that? This is from the World Health Organization. It may cause harmful effects to the nervous, digestive, respiratory, immune, blah, 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 impaired vision, hearing, paralysis, insomnia, developmental and attention deficit. No threshold below which some adverse effects do not occur. That's the key thing. No threshold below which some adverse effects do not occur. So that doesn't mean there's a safe amount of mercury. This is okay, this isn't. Everybody's different, and there is no safe amount of mercury that can be released into your body. This is Richardson assessment updating exposure, re-examining reference exposure levels, and critically evaluating. This is a brilliant guy. He's a Canadian, but he's really, really smart dude and does a lot of research in mercury. It was determined that some 67 million Americans would exceed the mercury dose associated with the reference dose of 0.3 micrograms per cubic meter established by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency in 1995. So 67 million of us are exceeding our dose because of mercury fillings. Mercury-induced vascular toxicity, impairment of angiogenesis. This is Perinundi's study from the University of Ohio State. Transitional heavy metals attack to lipids in the endothelium of the blood vessels, altering lipid signaling mediators. Prostaglandins are released, causing inflammation, tears in the membrane. Plaque forms to repair the damage. You know, there's also some studies done by Levy. He's a cardiologist that shows that heart disease is actually isolated scurvy. The same thing here. You get inflammation in the blood vessel in the heart. Plaque comes in to bandage that over as it should, and continued exposure to mercury or lack of vitamin C causes the plaque to build up. One thing, a lot of studies are showing there's no correlation between high cholesterol and heart disease. You know, it's not there. A lot of money be made off low cholesterol drugs, but there's something else that we got to be doing. Mercury causes cytotoxicity in the vascular epithelium. It's very toxic, so the inner lumen of the blood vessel, it's causing, you might just say sores. It's breaking it down. Plaque comes in to bandage it so it can heal. As the plaque builds up, you get blockage. Methylmercury causes mitochondrial damage. We know that. Once the mitochondria is damaged, which is the ATP source in the cell produces hydroxides and continually pollutes the cell. Mercury effect on neurofibers, okay? This is interesting. Demyelination of neurofibers can lead to diseases such as MS, Lou Gehrig's, mental illness, and depression.
How mercury causes brain neuron degeneration. Mercury has long been known to be a potent neurotoxic substance, whether it is inhaled or consumed in the diet as a food contaminant. Over the past 15 years, medical research laboratories have established that dental amalgam tooth fillings are a major contributor to mercury body burden. In 1997, a team of research scientists demonstrated that mercury vapor inhalation by animals produced a molecular lesion in brain protein metabolism, which was similar to a lesion seen in 80% of Alzheimer's diseased brains. Recently completed experiments by scientists at the University of Calgary's Faculty of Medicine now reveal, with direct visual evidence from brain neuron tissue cultures, how mercury ions actually alter the cell membrane structure of developing neurons. To better understand mercury's effect on the brain, let us first illustrate what brain neurons look like and how they grow. In this animation, we see 3 brain neurons growing in a tissue culture, each with a central cell body and numerous neurite processes. At the end of each neurite is a growth cone where structural proteins are assembled to form the cell membrane. 2 principal proteins involved in growth cone function are actin, which is responsible for the pulsating motion seen here, and tubulin, a major structural component of the neurite membrane. During normal cell growth, tubulin molecules link together end-to-end to form microtubules, which surround neurofibrils, another structural protein component of the neuronal axon. Shown here is the neurite of a live neuron isolated from snail brain tissue, displaying linear growth due to growth cone activity. It is important to note that growth cones in all animal species, ranging from snails to humans, have identical structural and behavioral characteristics, and use proteins of virtually identical composition. In this experiment, neurons also isolated from snail brain tissue were grown in culture for several days, after which very low concentrations of mercury were added to the culture medium for 20 minutes. Over the next 30 minutes, the neurite membrane underwent rapid degeneration, leaving behind the denuded neurofibrils seen here. In contrast, other heavy metals added at this same concentration, such as aluminum, lead, cadmium, and manganese, did not produce this effect. To understand how mercury causes this degeneration, Let us return to our illustration. As mentioned before, tubulin proteins link together during normal cell growth to form the microtubules which support the neurite structure. When mercury ions are introduced into the culture medium, they infiltrate the cell and bind themselves to newly synthesized tubulin molecules. More specifically, the mercury ions attach themselves to the binding site reserved for guanosine triphosphate, or GTP, on the beta subunit of the affected tubulin molecules. Since bound GTP normally provides the energy which allows tubulin molecules to attach to one another, mercury ions bound to these sites prevent tubulin proteins from linking together. Consequently, the neurite's microtubules begin to disassemble into free tubulin molecules, leaving the neurite stripped of its supporting structure. Ultimately, both the developing neurite and its growth cone collapse, and some denuded neurofibrils form aggregates or tangles, as depicted here. Shown here is a neurite growth cone stained specifically for tubulin and actin, before and after mercury exposure. Note that the mercury has caused disintegration of tubulin microtubule structure. These new findings reveal important visual evidence as to how mercury causes neurodegeneration. More importantly, this study provides the first direct evidence that low-level mercury exposure is indeed a precipitating factor that can initiate this neurodegenerative process within the brain.
Interesting. Griff, how close are we to a gram? Okay. Oh, crap. Did it again here. I'm pushing the same button, but this is, let's see here. I don't know why it's me. What? That's what I've been doing.
But you can't see it because you're blinded.
Well, I've been pushing play, man. All right.
Where you are?
I don't know. Let me go back here a little bit. Yeah, that must be it. I think what happens if you get your finger on both those buttons, it does that. Okay, what happens to 80% of the mercury vapor absorbed into the body from dental amalgam fillings? It absorbed by the lungs and passed to the rest of the body, particularly the brain, kidney, liver, lung, and gastrointestinal tract. The half-life of metallic mercury varies depending on the organ where the mercury was deposited and the state of oxidation. Example, half-lives of mercury in the whole body and kidney regions have an estimated of 58 days, whereas mercury deposit in the brain can have a half-life of up to several decades. Now remember, the half-life is the time it takes for half of the mercury to be removed. And then the next is how much the rest of that remaining mercury. So to get rid of all the mercury in someone can take years, can take decades if you're not continually exposed. Symptoms of mercury exposure, we talked a little bit about this. You can have cognitive and neurological impairment. You get endocrine disruption, headaches, insomnia, physiological issues. It's just a lot. Hearing loss. We hear a lot about hearing loss and tinnitus. Nerve response. Yeah. I got a constant ringing up here. I can't hear you. Tremors. Who doesn't have those? Fatigue. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff being blamed on it. If it all is true, I don't know. But it's enough evidence to suggest that, we shouldn't be using this. We shouldn't be absorbing it. Dental mercury has been scientifically linked to these health issues for scientific research. See the IAOMT's position statement against dental amalgam, and for research library at the IAOMT.org. Tons of stuff there, tons of it. Allergies to antibiotic resistant, cardiovascular problems, again, hearing loss, MS, periodontal disease, suicidal indications, thyroiditis, chronic fatigue, kidney disease, autism, immune disorders. So a lot of things, and so just need to be aware. Genetic predisposition and dental mercury risks. Mercury exposure from dental mercury amalgam threatens people with generic variants such as can impact the response to mercury exposure, such as CPOX4 and APO3 and 4. Recent research has identified predisposition to neurological impacts by mercury exposure from dental amalgam in male children with CPOX4. And other genetic traits that have been examined for health impairment caused by mercury exposure include methylmethylism, MT, methylthione, polymorphism, and variants and mutations. Just all kinds of stuff going on there, and learning more and more all the time. Genetic susceptibility to mercury. Why aren't we all dead? Why did that patient come in with 100 amalgams and he's still okay? Well, alloprotein E genotyping is a potential biomarker for mercury neurotoxicity. And alloprotein, alloprotein, it's a cholesterol transporting protein. And APO4 has very reduced mercury detoxification. It's got 2 arginine molecules on it. So the idea here is, as I'll show you, the APO2, there's an APO3 too, also. It's the greatest mercury detoxifying capacity because it's got 2 cysteine molecules on it. And the APO, doesn't show the 3 here, but the APO3 has an arginine and a cysteine. So you got APO4 that has 2 arginines, APO3 has an arginine and a cysteine, and then you have APO2 with 2 cysteine. So the cysteine is a sulfhydryl group, and what it does is going to cling to mercury and get it out of the body. So if you're a type 2, you can measure this, then you have great reducing capacity. In other words, you're detoxifying yourself. APO3, kind of, APO4, none. So part of the susceptibility to mercury exposure could be whether APO4, 3, or 2. And also low hair mercury in autistic children. A lot of moms come in and say, well, I had my child tested. They don't have any mercury because they didn't have any mercury in their hair. Well, they're not secreting mercury. That's why they don't have it in their hair. If they don't have it in their sweat, they don't have it in their stool, they don't have it in their urine, they're hoarding it. They're not getting rid of it. And remember, mom could have given these children and do give these children mercury exposure in the womb and perhaps in the breast milk. So if mom's got mercury filling, so does the children. And if they're an APO4, they're not getting rid of mercury. So they're not going to have it in their hair. They're not going to have it in their urine. So when you get these tests and you go, I don't have any mercury because I don't have any in my hair, it's like, well, that doesn't mean you don't have any. That just means you're not secreting it. We all have mercury. The 90-year-old patient, like I mentioned several times, full amalgams, health, I have had the whole life, they're fine. Smokers that come in, not a problem in the world. They're 90 years old, still smoking. You're thinking, gee, somebody else comes in and they don't smoke and they've got lung cancer. All right, Dr. James Wood stated 25% to 50% of people have these genetic variants. Doctor, I'm going to help you with that. Yadkinville discussed the lifetime risk of neurological damage and noted, we're not talking about a small risk here. Allergies to dental mercury. Approximately 21 million Americans are likely allergic to mercury. That number varies a bit. We heard Baylor was something like a third or something in that neighborhood. Metal allergies are known to be on the rise. There's so many toxins in our environment that we're probably getting more susceptible to different metals. Most dental, why is it me with this thing? Most dental patients are not tested for mercury allergies. I don't test them specifically for mercury allergies. I just get it out of there. Health conditions linked to dental metal allergies include autoimmune disorders, fatigue, multiple sclerosis, chemical sensitivity, oral lichenoid lesions, and even infertility. So a little bit of everything's thrown at it, and I'm sure many of it is correct. A number of patients with with health conditions linked to dental amalgam allergies improve or recover after mercury filling removal. I've had some patients that don't. I've had some patients that had immediate relief, probably a galvanic effect. But these people generally don't get better until they're chelated. So they go to their alternative physician, and the physician uses different techniques to get the mercury, lead, arsenic, whatever's in their body out. Again, don't try to do that yourself. That's the dentist thing. It's a physician thing. Biological responses after amalgam removal. Mercury has a time-dose relationship. It builds up over time, and it depends on how much is in there. Amalgam is not stable. We know it's a battery. It releases mercury and releases electrons. People respond in one of 5 ways. No health changes. You see that? Worse, if increased exposure due to poor removal protocol. In other words, you get in there. I've had many patients come out and say, "Oh, I got my mercury fillings out about 10 years ago." And like there wasn't a whole lot of safety issues 10 years ago. So they got a load of mercury when they had those. They might have been better leaving them in and having them out today than they did when they took them all out. So that's a consideration. A better health after detoxification by physicians, as I remember. And not regular physicians not going to detoxify these people. You got to find an alternative physician in your community. And the nice thing about that, you can refer back and forth. If they know you can remove it properly, they're going to send their patients to you. And then you can send them patients. But they're the ones that do the detoxification. We do the mercury removal. Better health immediately upon removal. Again, that's a galvanic reaction. That's something that doesn't happen immediately. Hal Huggins used to talk about people coming in wheelchairs and he'd remove their mercury and they'd walk out. I've never had that experience, but maybe he did. Some better after amalgam removal and more after a physician detox. So it's a combination of electrical and the pollution of the mercury. Well, this is over current allowable uses of mercury in the U.S. This is what is acceptable. Compact fluorescent light bulbs, which are kind of being phased out with the newer techniques. Dental amalgam mercury fillings, specific types of flu shots and vaccines, thimerosal. Numerous manufacturing processes. Chlorine as alkaline. That's a very strange way they make chlorine. So for bleach and stuff like that and caustic soda. Mercury regulations in the U.S., some type of regulation, ban, restriction, and or limitation as in air pollution, discharge into waterways, levels in drinking water, and paper food packaging. We know these things. Guidelines for fish and shellfish consumption, and paints, pesticides, and cosmetics, and batteries, toys, and jewelry, and switches, thermometers, measuring devices, thermostats. I always wonder when the little kids have these sneakers on that light up. As they walk, they're really cool to watch, but they have mercury switches in them. So probably not a good idea to throw those away. They need to be recycled, and don't burn them. We're the only industry in the U.S. that's not required to prevent mercury waste from entering the environment. Everybody else is regulated. I talk to my OSHA lady who comes in once a year, and she goes through all of our bottles and makes sure everything's labeled, and our MSDS sheets are up to date. That's a different name now, but the MSDS sheets are up to date. And I've had conversations about mercury. She is not interested whatsoever in anything about mercury in our office. And that's an OSHA person. So they don't care about dentistry. And so you guys are sitting out there getting polluted, and you couldn't do that in a fluorescent light bulb business. They'd be all over you. And then off 28 tons, excuse me, 60% of mercury reaching treatment facilities is from dental offices. I mentioned that earlier. 28 tons of mercury is entering our environment per year because all dental offices do not have separators. 28 tons. So it's estimated that each separator would take out 1/4 to 1/2 pound of mercury a year. So each office, if they had one, would take out that much mercury. But the combined total of all the dentists in the U.S. would be 28 tons. That's a lot of mercury.
Mercury is one of the most toxic elements and a persistent traveler through our environment. So who's the travel agent for this elemental poison? Coal-fired power plants? Most definitely. Mining operations? Of course. Your neighborhood dental office? Surprisingly, yes. The United Nations Environment Program reports that 10% of global mercury usage is for amalgam tooth fillings. This results in up to 340 tons of dental mercury journeying into the environment each year. In the United States, dentists are currently the largest users of elemental mercury. This accounts for roughly 32 tons of mercury used yearly to place amalgam restorations, otherwise known as silver fillings. Although the number of amalgams placed has decreased over the last few decades, dentists still use amalgam without precautions, so the threat of mercury exposure continues. Dental mercury travels many pathways on its journey back into the environment. It starts when a dentist receives pre-capsulated dental amalgam. In each capsule, up to 900 milligrams of elemental mercury is separated from the other alloys. To make the final product, the capsule is vigorously shaken in a triturator to thoroughly mix all the elements. Occupational safety concerns arise because this heats the mercury, creating thousands of micrograms of mercury vapor, which are released upon opening the capsule. The used amalgam capsule still contains a small amount of mercury, so the ADA recommends the capsules be stored in an airtight container and collected by a hazardous waste company. Unfortunately, the majority of dentists toss the capsules into the trash. This mercury-contaminated trash will eventually travel to a landfill, where the mercury will continue its trek down into the soil. Back at the dental office, the freshly mixed amalgam is placed into the tooth. The dentist then carves away any excess material. While patients swallow some amalgam waste, most is suctioned out and flows through a filtration system. But this system only captures a small percent of the larger pieces. The vast majority of much smaller pieces escape into the wastewater. A similar scenario plays out when dentists replace amalgam fillings. Many dentists clean out their filtration systems by dumping the captured mercury-tainted sludge down the drain. A study funded by the ADA estimated that amalgam fillings contribute up to 50% of the mercury found in wastewater. This contaminated water then flows to publicly owned water treatment plants. While efforts are made to remove the mercury from wastewater, most of it settles down into the sewage sludge, which is then taken and spread on land as fertilizer, or deposited in a landfill. In both scenarios, the mercury constantly off-gases into the atmosphere and seeps into the ground. A percentage of the sewage sludge is also sent packing to incinerators. With over 200 tons of dental mercury in the mouths of Americans, even exhaling is a contributor of mercury to our atmosphere. Additionally, people with amalgam fillings serve as hosts for mercury's passage back into our environment through the excretion of human waste. Mercury's ride continues even after death. Crematories, which are unregulated and contain no filtering processes, are a growing vehicle for transporting mercury back into the atmosphere. When all the various pathways are accounted for, dental mercury from the United States contributes roughly 28.5 tons into the environment each year. The governments of the world are actively working together to reduce the amount of mercury released globally to protect human health. The first and foremost step to eliminating mercury released from dental amalgam is to discontinue the use of this toxic material. With the threat so great and the solutions so simple, it's time to restrict mercury's passport.
Wasn't that well done? Randall Moore does a lot of these videos for us. He's really a talented videographer, I guess it's called. But that really sums it up. So it doesn't matter where you put the mercury, it's going to be back in the environment. All right, let's get on to this because we got a break to get to. The Minamata Convention on Mercury, which Griff went to, the following initiatives were regards to dental mercury amalgams, setting national objectives aiming at minimizing its use, promoting the use of cost-effective and clinically effective mercury-free alternatives, encouraging representative professional organizations and dental schools to educate and train dental professionals and students on the use of mercury-free dental restorations and alternative, discouraging insurance policies and programs that favor dental amalgam, restricting the use of dental amalgam to encapsulated form. I don't know how much that's going to help, but promoting what it does, it doesn't allow the mercury in the big containers to be used for gold mining, which is really an environmental problem. Promoting the use of best environmental practices in dental facilities to reduce release of mercury and mercury compounds to the water and the land. And this is a picture of the Minamata Convention. Minamata was the area, I guess it was after World War II, that the factories and stuff in Japan were dumping mercury into the bay, and the people were eating the fish from the bay, and many of them died and had birth defects and stuff like that. So kind of, I guess, when we first realized what mercury was doing back in the, late 40s maybe, early 50s. So that's the reason the convention was there. Protecting the office environment. This is rubber dam with amalgam sludge on it. And what do you do with this mercury waste? Well, you put it in a mercury container. We take all of our stuff, put it in a 5-gallon bucket, and then we have to have that recycled. So that's what you do. It's costly to do it, but if you don't, you're putting mercury back into the environment. You got a mercury separator, which, by the way, mercury separators are being mandated, so you're going to have to get one. Even if it weren't mandated, I've had one for 20 years. I wouldn't practice without one. That's a picture of Joe. He's got his respirator on as he's dumping his mercury gloves into the main collection tub. Dental office wastewater contains 1.5 pounds of mercury per dentist per year. It only takes half a gram of mercury to pollute a 10-acre lake. So if you have a half a gram of mercury, you can't eat the fish in that lake. And this is a picture of my separator, Rebec. I don't think they usually come here, but there's a number of exhibitors will have their separators out there. And this is a picture of, is this yours, Joe? Somebody's, there's different varieties of them. That's a slide of how it works. And easy to connect. This is another brand here, Mars. And this is that line cleaners containing bleach or chlorine will increase the release of mercury from amalgam trapped in lines and separators. So that's not a good thing to do. And so why are we not supposed to eat humans anymore? Because they contain toxic levels of mercury. Thanks to all the fillings. What is the risk dental amalgam mercury exposure and human health risks throughout the lifespan? That's a little hard to read. Sources of mercury exposure, we talked about that. Dental amalgam, air, water, fish, dental mercury exposure and risks, toxic effects. Can you read that? I'm having a hard time. Toxic effects of this mercury exposure vary by individual. We know that. And one of the contributors or symptoms can be present and can change over time. Symptoms, we talked about that. So this is kind of a review of what we've talked about. This again is going to be hard to read, but we're talking about a pregnant mom and the mercury that's going to be concentrated in her body. Epigenics of dental mercury. A growing volume of recently published scientific research is examining how mercury exposure, including that form dental amalgam fillings, can pose highly significant risk to individuals with specific gene traits, including CPOX4, APO, we talked about that, and polymorphisms. So everybody reacts a little bit different to it. Health conditions associated with dental mercury, again, this is redundant, but allergies, autoimmune resistance, chronic kidney failure, kidney disease, microism, Parkinson's, thyroiditis, just a whole host of things, MS. Now, I did not push that button like that, but there, I swear I didn't. Yeah, well, I'm trying to get you back. I'm going to let you, I hit that and didn't do a thing. Yeah. All right, guys, I'm going to turn it to have a break. Thank you.